On behalf of the New Zealand Law Society, thank you all very much for attending this important career development seminar. I'm going to shortly hand over to Anitesh Govind, who will be moderating this session. Anitesh is the Director of Resolute Lawyers in Auckland. He's also on the Auckland Branch Council and is a past vice president, I should say, of ILANS. Thank you, Anitesh. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Glenda. Kia ora koutou to everyone and welcome to this webinar. We're looking forward to hearing from the panelists. We've got 4 panelists today, and the seminar is about developing a career in regional Aotearoa in New Zealand. So it's going to be fantastic. Can I just get all the speakers, panelists to kind of switch on their cameras, please, so that people can get to see you and meet you over Zoom. Good to see you all today, and I'll get started with the webinar. If you have questions and answers, feel free to put it through the Q&A side of things, so we can answer that as we kind of go through the questions. I have a bunch of questions that which already have been provided that a lot of the audience has asked, so I will ask them one by one with the panelists, and each panelist can answer the questions as they come to them, or others can add on top of it as well. So let's start with, we have Georgia, we have Bree, Shannon, and Madeleine. Georgia, if you want to start with your background and who you are, and then we can go from there.
Yep, sure. So hi, I'm Georgia Osmond. I work as a property lawyer at Gibson Sheat Lawyers in Masterton. I moved down to Masterton from Auckland at the beginning of 2021. So I've been living in Masterton for the past 2.5 years now.
Thank you, Georgia.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Bree Munro. I'm a staff solicitor here at Woodward Chrisp in Gisborne. I'm in the litigation team. I've been here for about 3.5 years now. I came up from Balclutha, South Otago at the start of 2020.
Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Shannon Hollis. Firstly, apologies for my voice. You've got me on the tail end of a lovely cold, so if I disappear mid-webinar, my apologies, but I will hang in for as long as I can. I am on the sunny west coast of the South Island. I'm in Westport, and we also operate an office in Greymouth. I work for Connors Legal and have done for about the past 14 years.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hi everyone, I'm Madeleine Henderson. I'm a partner at Coleridge Law, which is a 2-woman firm in Methven, which is at the bottom of Mount Hutt, for anyone who doesn't know it. I am a general practitioner nowadays, but have previously worked in litigation and general practice in Ashburton and Christchurch.
Right, thank you. As you can all see, behind every speaker, panelist, we have images of where they live and the beautiful country we have and the regions they have to offer. So I haven't put something because I'm from Auckland and it probably doesn't make people that excited about it. So let's talk more about what we can do with going to regions and how it can help your career. So the first question I have is recommendations for meeting and networking when it comes to working from remote places or working from the regions. What and how do you kind of mix and mingle people and network with people? So Georgia, if you want to kind of give your view, and then probably Shannon, you can kind of give your view about that. What happens and how do you network and how do you meet people?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of our office itself, we've got an office in Lower Hutt and Wellington as well. So we're a bit different. We're a bit of a satellite office. So within the firm itself, there's encouragement to go to the other offices as often as you can to meet up with people. We do also try to have mid-year functions and social events with the other offices so we stay connected. In terms of actually in Masterton, there's a big push for networking, so getting out there within the community. We do a lot of work with Business Wairarapa and attending Business After 5 functions, and that's a way for us to connect with the other businesses in the community. And what I find is that's actually how you get clients and you actually just meet people is through attending those events as well as joining other community groups. So I'm a member of Partisan Rotary in the Wairarapa, and I've also just been elected as the president for Toastmasters Wairarapa for the 2023-2024 year. And that's just really how you get to know people. You just have to sort of put yourself out there and join different groups in the community.
Right. And Shannon, do you have a view on how you do this at your firm?
Yeah, so we have two offices, obviously one in Westport, one in Greymouth. Geographically, that's about 100-kilometre distance.
Sure.
So not far. It's about an hour and a quarter drive. So again, we try and move up and down the offices as we can, depending on what work is on. Yeah. Also, it's literally, I find sometimes best it's the phone call. We're in constant phone contact. We operate the same systems, so everybody is really intertwined. I think it's also important to note that because we are in a small rural and regional centre, it's the other firms we do have close working relationships with. So more often than not, another local firm will be on the other side of a transaction, so you are in regular contact with them. The neat thing with that is that you end up with great sort of collegial relationships. Mm-hmm. And I find that then if I'm coming across something different or difficult, I don't actually hesitate ringing one of those other firms as well. So that's been kind of the neat thing about you are in a close knit network. So I have found that there hasn't actually been a great deal of challenge to maintain good relationships.
Great. Just to kind of give some insight to the viewers on what we are looking at, what's the size of the firms we're talking at, and how big is the legal fraternity in each town? So if we could start with Georgia and go through it, how big is your firm and how many people are in the area that you are working?
That's a good question. In our office itself, there's about 20 staff in our office itself. In terms of the firm, I think we're just over 100 people across the three offices. In terms of the legal network in Masterton itself, we've got about 3 or 4 other law firms, probably of a similar size. But then Wairarapa wide, there's a couple more in there as well. So yeah, so I completely agree with Shannon in terms of you do come into regular contact with other lawyers from other law firms in transactions and also just out and about in the community.
Yeah. Shannon, what about you? How big is the legal fraternity and how big is the firm?
Yeah, so our Westport office runs about 6 to 8 people. Of that, 3 are solicitors, not all full-time. And then down in Greymouth, we have our practice principal and another solicitor down there also. Add on to that your legal executives and things as well. So it's not big. You do run a really kind of tight, efficient ship. Everyone plays a really crucial kind of cog in the system. Generally, in terms of firms on the coast, so here in Westport, there was 3. We're now down to 2 due to a retirement. And then down between Greymouth and Hokitika, you would have another 4 offices heading down the coast there. So it is and I guess that's what I mean about that. Those are the people you're regularly dealing with. Yeah.
Bree, what about yourself? How big is the office and how big is the fraternity in Gisborne?
So in the office, we have about 40 staff members. Most of us are based in the Gisborne office, but we also have a solicitor in Auckland and 3 legal executives in our Wairoa office as well, at about 40 all up, 20 of those being solicitors. In Gisborne itself, I'm going to give an educated guess, but around 80 solicitors, I think. So that's everyone, including criminal lawyers, family lawyers, commercial lawyers. I think all up it would be around 80 of us, and we're all very close, which is great.
Right. And Madeleine, what about you?
So in our firm, like I sort of said earlier, we're just 2 of us, so we do everything. But I'd say our sort of practice area is mid-Canterbury, and there's a handful or so of other law firms. One firm does Aotearoa and Methven, and the rest are all Ashburton based, which is only about 25-30 minute drive from here. And much the same as what the others have said, we have really close relationships with all those lawyers and those firms. We deal with them regularly. And I'd say there's probably, it's been a while since I've looked at the exact numbers, but maybe around 30 or so lawyers in Ashburton, and a couple of the firms there have branches in Christchurch as well, which is about 100 k's up the road from there. So probably much like Westport and Greymouth, about an hour or so's drive. So yeah, I think that sort of sums up the mid-Canterbury experience anyway.
Yeah, it's quite big. It's a lot bigger than I imagined. So all the teams are quite big. So Shannon, I'm going to ask you and Madeleine about questions about employers, because you guys are the most senior in here. So as an employer, what is one thing you could do better to attract young people coming to the regions, or young grads coming to the regions?
Well, I think, look at these pictures in the background, just such a beautiful part of New Zealand. There's so much of New Zealand to explore, but I think as well as being a great opportunity career-wise, I think there's opportunities for great lifestyles outside of work. And I think in terms of attracting, junior lawyers and new lawyers to the regions, one thing that probably helped me was having, perks as part of your employment package. That's really attractive. I think when I first came to Ashburton, we had extra leave, phone paid for, which might be the norm now as when you start, I'm not sure, and a gym membership, that sort of thing. So I think there's certainly, along with the benefits that generally the regions offer, firms could take steps such as that to I guess sell it even more so than it already is.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, Anitesh, it's that, look, it is a real push on that lifestyle. I am a little biased, so the coast is home for me.
Yes.
And my initial intent was to come home for 3 years, gain my sort of grounding and experience, and then head off again. But what I quickly came to appreciate was a lifestyle. It meant that I didn't have travel time to work. That gave me extra time to myself. And for me, I couldn't see anything unattractive about a lower cost of living, and outgoings that I didn't then have to meet. So when I weighed those things up, and my own personal interests of outdoor and sports and things, it made total sense. So I think some of it boils down to some individuals, but at the same time, then there's a real obvious of the things of cost of living and the likes. The push for me also was that coming into a small regional firm, you will actually gain probably greater experience at a far faster pace, because, like Madeleine explained before, you usually undertake more tasks than what you would in a larger firm where you're a little bit more ring fence, I suppose. So I think experience-wise, for a young person, you will gain that a lot quicker than potentially what you would in a larger centre.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is, you're right. When I was younger, I used to try and apply for roles, and people used to say, get a car park, right? And to get a car park in Auckland costs you $30 a day, so it's quite expensive, just parking. And the beauty is, in smaller regions, a lot of times parking is not an issue, and traveling is not an issue. So you're within 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Or if you're living an hour away, that's because you want the lifestyle of being on a big farm. So it's definitely the thing. I've got some questions about private practice and in-house. I'll come back to that a bit later. How about we just kind of move on to the other side, is what degree did you have to study to do law? So basically, did you do a conjoined degree alongside a law degree, and did you find it to be helpful? So perhaps if we get Bree and Georgia to answer that, and then can see if other speakers have more to add.
Yes, so I studied law at Otago University, and with that also a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in politics and minoring in criminology. I think for those university students out there, it was a really good idea just to break up those content-heavy law papers with something else that was a little bit different, and maybe a little bit more room to think differently. I think I learned a lot from that as well. And also, of course, with most of my work being in the defence law area, having the criminology background was helpful as well. So on the whole, I think it's a good idea to do something alongside your law papers.
Right. Georgia, what about you?
Yes, so I did, alongside my law degree, I did a Bachelor of Arts as well. I double majored in anthropology and ancient history. That was kind of, I like to refer to as my two passions. So law and archaeology was something I always wanted to pursue. And I completely agree with everything Bree has said, is that it's a really good break from your law papers to go and do something completely different. I mean, I would go from learning about torts or contract and then just go and look at different bones of animals or how to hack at them with different tools. And it was completely different, but it was something interesting, and it does encourage you to think critically and differently. And I also found I had the opportunity to then combine those two when I did my honours dissertation of right on cultural heritage. So it was a good managing to work them both in with each other. So I highly recommend doing another degree to keep slightly sane.
Yeah, okay. And so yeah, I kind of that helps you with kind of bringing different sides to your life, right? I guess that's the key. Shannon and Madeleine, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for me, I guess if I had my time again, I probably would have added in a couple of accounting papers. So one thing I have found is through the various areas of law that I may be working in, more often than not, there will be a component of accounting that comes into it. And it frustrates me that I don't have the level of understanding of an accountant. And that's something that I've had to accept. But it would actually go a long way to helping just having a better basic understanding in terms of accounting principles.
Yeah, and it comes true for litigators as well, by the way. For you do need to kind of look at that, because it's zero rated GST and all that stuff just kind of goes, whoa. So yeah. Let's talk about lifestyle. Now I'm going to make a big assumption that you guys have kids. So these panelists that have kids, can you tell us how are you managing challenges of working and running a firm, or managing staff, and the work commitments, motherhood, and cherishing your young children? How does that work for you, especially in the regions?
I would say one thing that has been a huge difference coming back to work after having children is that it forces you to become really efficient in the time that you have at work. And you're also forced to balance it in a way, because it gets to 5 o'clock and I've got to get my kids picked up. So you've got to sort of manage, I guess, demands from both aspects, demands from, children, the care of children, but also demands from clients and workload. I'm not sure, anyone's got the perfect answer there, but I think I really enjoy what I do, and my day-to-day is quite different depending on, work and home commitments. So I think, yeah, definitely possible and love it. So yeah, does Shannon, do you have any thoughts to add on that?
Yeah, so for me, I think the slightly slower pace of regional work actually lends its hand well to being a mum and continuing a working career. So I came back from maternity leave and made the decision I was going to come back to 4 days a week. So that is what I do. I then it gives me a day at home with my son Harry, and then he will have some time in daycare. So from a practical perspective, daycare is 300 metres down the road. I can walk there. And the same thing, if he's got any activities or bits and pieces on, then I can pop out and build that into my day. So again, that is something that is a real benefit of being in a small community practice. Everything is close, it's affordable, and it means that I don't have to trade off things. I can have a good balance. And yeah, it was something I was a bit worried about for a while, but you do adapt. And I think those around you adapt as well. And I think people are getting more and more understanding. And it's certainly something that, look, I would encourage, don't make yourself, push yourself into a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, and do you find that being in the regions, because everyone's quite collegial, that it helps? I'm not saying it's good to miss deadlines or something of that nature, but if you are under the pump and you do kind of have to take extra couple of hours to respond to something, the other side's kind of usually more collegial about it. They're understanding that something's probably up. Do you guys find that? Because in Auckland, it's quite different.
I sort of treat it in a way, if you don't answer an email straight away or a phone call, I could be in a meeting with a client, I could be anywhere. So it's not a case of, oh, sorry, I'm not available because I'm busy with my children. I'm just not available full stop all the time to be there at the drop of a hat. And so I think the response times are what, are reasonable in terms of I manage my workload and deadlines myself. You know what they are, and you work to them. And if you get an email at 5 o'clock, I don't anticipate that they expect a response that night, so you can reply the next day. And I don't feel there's that sort of, I guess the pressure comes from yourself rather than potentially it's maybe your own firm and other parts. But I think that the juggle is definitely, it's just a different commitment, really. Yeah.
Let's talk about legal career developments and regions. What are the advantages and disadvantages of working in the regions compared to big cities? And is there more? I think, Shannon, you already spoken a little bit about it, but do any of the speakers have their kind of input on as to what comes out of this? And is there any disadvantage, really? The advantage has already been spoken about, but what are the disadvantages and advantages of that?
So for me, I guess I can probably only speak to the advantages, a bit one-sided. That, like I said, for me, I found when I spoke with my colleagues who I'd either come through university with and then had seen sort of in those first 1 to 3 years, was how different our rate of experience was. So what I had managed to pick up and what I was actively working on in terms of my files in that first 1 to 3 years was very different. My colleagues out of main centres were much slower with their rate of experience and growth. So for me, it was a big advantage to be in the small region in terms of my own personal career path and development. It's expedited.
Sure, yeah. Bree and Georgia, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. From a defence lawyer perspective, similar to what Shannon was saying, I think my rate of experience was a lot different to maybe some of my counterparts in other cities. I think it was maybe within my first 2 days I was appearing in court, and with supervision, of course. But it was really good to get the confidence in early, just understanding the rhythm of the courtroom, how it felt to be standing and presenting in front of the judge, and going from there. So it was really good. That hands-on experience, I think, was vital when it wasn't just a matter of doing administrative appearances. As I gained more experience, I was doing sentencings on my own and judge-alone trials and things like that. So it was really cool. I think a massive part of the appeal for me here in Gisborne is the defence bar. We're all really tight-knit, very supportive, and I know all of the senior lawyers there and they all know me, and there's been so many times, especially in the first year, where maybe one of my supervisors wasn't available and I've barged into the lawyer's room and asked everyone for help, and they've all jumped in and grabbed my file and told me what to do, and I've managed to pick it up and run from there. So I can't speak for everywhere, but I think that's a really special part of working here in Gisborne, having that collegiality and that support. I guess from a work-life balance perspective, you'll see this behind me. This is the view from my house. So I live on the beachfront. I'm not sure if many other young lawyers can say the same in main centres, but it's definitely something that's attainable here in Gisborne, and being able to go home at a reasonable hour and enjoy that, and also have time for myself and all my hobbies is really important, and I think good for my overall development. And when I'm at work, I'm working hard, but also know that I can go home and have some time to myself as well.
Yeah, it's a nice photo, by the way.
Thanks.
Georgia, do you have anything to add?
Not much more, I guess, but to say, within the first 20 minutes on my first day, I was put into a client meeting. So I think it was to discuss wills or something, but sort of kind of chucked in the deep end a little bit, but it was really good practice. And I found that that's the way that I've been managing to learn, is that just kind of been given something, going, have a crack at it, see how you go, and then get back to me if you have any questions. And I've found that really, really useful. And I feel like I wouldn't have had that same opportunity if I'd stayed in Auckland or in one of the biggest centres. And then I completely second what Bree says in terms of that work-life balance. I live about 5 minutes from home, so it's pretty good. I can just get in the car at, the latest I've ever left work has probably been about 6 o'clock. And even that, was a bit of a, oh, why are you staying late? What's going on here? So, but it's great being able to just go home, and then it's 5 minutes. There's no traffic. It's super. There's no traffic jams. It's great. We've got parking right outside the office. It's a slower pace. It's a lot more relaxed, and you can just go home and just focus on yourself for the night, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and I think Bree, you might be able to answer this. Is there's no PDS in Gisborne, right? So there's no public defence. Yeah.
No, there's no PDS as such. So all of the although we are about 90% of the criminal caseload here is legal aid, so that all goes out to us as individual providers. And there's a number of us working here at Woodward, Chrisp, so we still do have the benefits of a PDS type arrangement, I guess, where we have seniors and a supervisor, but we have files under our name and can work on those, which is really cool.
Yeah, because one of the questions is, if someone is interested in criminal law, what is a great platform to start from? And I guess that's the answer, is the regions, because you
Definitely.
get to do trials and stuff, I'm guessing.
Definitely, yes. And I mean, every centre's different, but here in Gisborne, there's a really wide variety of cases that you can jump onto. I'd feel totally comfortable asking one of the other senior lawyers at the bar if I could junior on their trials, as well as my own supervisors. Again, that's that collegiality point coming through, where you can go outside your firm, because we're all so close-knit and willing to support each other. We all sort of know what level we're at and where we're trying to go, so people are really willing to help out to get you to that next phase in your career. Yeah, so I definitely would say the regions.
Yeah, and I got to say, some of my friends have gone to the regions to kind of get their path 1, 2, 3 quickly, and that's the place to be. So yeah. Talking about regions and potential. Madeleine and Shannon, you can probably answer this. Is there potential for establishing an immigration law practice in the regions?
Yeah, so I tend to think it is a growing area. I get that. But look, in my experience, you do have to be a bit more diverse if you were going to operate, particularly out on your own. There is a small number of firms servicing a wide geographical area, and then a wide geographical demographic. So for me, look, by all means, have a wee niche that you deal with, but also don't cut yourself off to the other general practice work.
Yeah, and I would echo that as well. In terms of, you do have to sort of be prepared for everything and anything, because you just don't know what will come in your door. But there's certainly room to specialise if that's what you want to do within an area. And I think, COVID has been a friend to the regions. I think you can, work anywhere and at any time, really. And I think in regional New Zealand, there's a lot of immigrant workers in primary industries and in the agricultural sector, where that employers and employees might need assistance with that side of things. So I think the potential has grown since COVID has hit, and I think we're probably an example of that. We started our firm in 2021, and we don't have a premise as such. We hire a meeting room, so we're sort of a virtual open door, and so I think there's potential for practice, the method of practice to change in the future. But equally, like Shannon said, you've got to be prepared for anything and everything, because there's just such a huge variety when you are servicing a large area, large geographical area.
Yeah. Bree and Georgia, you have anything to add to that? Or no?
No.
Talking, Madeleine, you just kind of spoke about, and Shannon, you spoke about kind of getting a lot more work in, so kind of having more general practice. There's a question: is there opportunity to branch away from general practice and specialize in the regions? So I guess you've answered the question, but do you guys have views about that specifically? Is it hard? Is it harder to specialize in a specific area, or is there a view about that?
Yeah, so just as an example, like in our two offices, we all undertake general practice work. You all have your real basic work that you do, but then our individual solicitors will undertake sort of niche work. So for example, one of my colleague might be sort of our civil litigation person, another one of our solicitors might handle the employment side of things. So there is definitely the ability to specialise. And I'm of the point of, well, why bother having, in such a small firm, we both don't need to be specialists on that area. So if we can actually tackle some set areas, but then still all cover the bare bones, what I'm calling the basics, then I think it works well for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, and I think one of those things is that you have to think about this. Sometimes when this is from starting a small firm, basically, whatever work comes through, you have to take it initially, and then slowly kind of choose area you want to specialize in. Or at least in Auckland, that's the case, because you do have to figure out where you want to go with things. So it's harder just to kind of be a specialist because there might not be enough work in that space. Criminal is probably different in family because there's a lot of family and criminal work everywhere, I find. So yeah. So one of the questions is, what career paths are available in the region? So except for law, I guess, what other things can you do? Are you guys on boards of professional development? How does that work?
Yeah, I'll speak to that if you like. So within my office, look, our principal, she will retire, and effectively myself and my colleague are her succession plan. That's an open discussion. So and we take steps towards sort of cementing that now. So from a legal career in my office, there is a pathway, and that's sort of understood. But for my own professional development, look, it's one of those things where I came to the office when I would have been 20, 21. And, that's a really long working career if I'm going to stay here. So I sort of went, look, I'm in a small community. I've actually got a bit of an obligation to them. I've got a skill set that I can apply to other things. So what I found is that for my own personal professional development and also interest, I started to get involved with things like school boards and community organisations and the likes. And look, part of that is a feel-good factor, but it's also that, you recognise that you do hold a skill and you should be able to give some of that back to the community. And so that was always a passion of mine. It was giving back to a community that supported me. And then it kind of moved on. So you had those sort of voluntary organisations that you're involved with. And then now I sit with a couple of professional directorships. So one of those is on our local lines company. I'm a director of which, look, that runs about a $38 million asset. So it's sizable. And so that's been really neat for me, as from a professional perspective, but also from a local community contribution perspective. In addition to that, I've been involved with as a director for Buller Rugby Union, which has allowed me to have some really good pathways through New Zealand rugby. And look, I will aspire to be part of their governance team one day. So while my career from a legal office perspective is is mapped and it does have a sort of a roof where it will get to, my personal professional development can continue, and realistically it's up to you. It's up to what amount of time you want to invest in doing that. And yeah, balancing off that part of, look, what have I got that I can give back?
Yeah. Madeleine, do you have anything to add, or Georgia and Bree?
I think Shannon summarised it really well. I mean, I've certainly am on committees and this local school board, things like that. And I think probably the overarching theme there is that when you are in a small town, there's a real sense of community and everyone does their bit, and it's a great way of meeting people. And yeah, that's probably what I'd have to add.
Okay. Hiring in regions, and I guess everyone can answer this from their experience. I think I kind of found this a big deal. Was big firms and city firms are all about GPAs and experience. What's your views about how important is the law school GPA when you're hiring or when you're looking for a job? And was that a big consideration in the firms that you guys are in? So can I get perhaps Georgia to start with this, and then we'll go through to Shannon and Bree and Madeleine.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my job where I'm at now was actually my first job in a law firm. So it was the time in which I applied, it was a case of, it was during COVID, and so a lot of places weren't hiring people in Auckland. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, let's expand my horizons and look further out. And so I didn't find that the GPA was as much of a concern with that. Like, my GPA was great, not, just putting that out there, but it was more that there wasn't a main focus. It was more, what can you actually bring to the firm in terms of your ability to actually relocate somewhere else, to work in a smaller town, your get up and go attitude to actually just take on work. That was more what I found, and yeah, I think that there was less of an emphasis on the GPA and more on what can you actually bring to the team, because it's a small knit team. What can you actually bring to it and contribute to make it better?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for me, ultimately, most of your learning will be done on job. So your law school sets you up, and your degree sets you up with your foundations, with discipline, with research skills. So yeah, you will have a GPA, but I don't necessarily find that for coming to a region that it's going to be such an integral part of what someone is looking at. They are looking to see how you are going to adapt to regional life, how you can develop a rapport with a really wide range of people. And whether you're going to stay. One of the big things is like you can attract people, but you actually need to retain them. You're going to invest time and energy in them, so you want a person that's the right fit, and that fit has various different things, and academic results is one of them. Experience-wise, look, it's not necessary. We all have to get our experience somewhere. Even as a senior, I will, occasionally delve into something that I haven't been involved in a long time, and I go, crikey, well, you've got to do it because you've got to get experience somehow. And most people are quite receptive to that, and colleagues are receptive. So look, as a grad, if there's a job advertised in a region, I say jump at it. Don't hold back because of a lack of experience, because ultimately you have to gain experience somewhere. And if you can present yourself as being of the right fit, being of someone who is going to be committed, going to stay, and actually invest some time in that community, I think it will get you further than what a GPA would. Maybe that's a little controversial. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd also. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that in terms of if you're looking to get your first job in the regions, I think you should also look at the firm you're going to, and see what sort of senior lawyers or partners they've got to provide that mentoring aspect in those early years, because yes, you've got to be prepared to jump in and do a bit of everything, but equally you don't want to find yourself drowning if you find that it's quite full on. And it is full on because there's lots to learn and you just don't know what will walk in the door. But not only do you have to be the right fit for them, I think you want them to be the right fit for you, especially because, like Shannon said, I think regional firms would love to retain good people, and it does have to work both ways. So I guess if you're looking for your job in the regions, check that out as well. GPA is one part of it, but there's a whole picture really.
Yeah, because I think in my experience, to kind of just speak about that, is GPA is a big thing in law firms, and I think there was an article written by a recruiter who said in Australia that kind of because of the push for hiring is so high and there's not enough lawyers that they have kind of let go of the GPA, but it's a very strong thing in New Zealand. But in my experience, what I saw is I usually look at the partner's profile, as Madeleine was saying, and the partner's profile, if it has an honours degree in their LLB, I usually go, he's going to be looking for a 4.0 GPA usually, right? So I'm not saying it's always the case, but sometimes it is what they want, is they want someone who is at that similar level to them. And then others are pretty much who are open to it, everything, and just someone who can get the work done. And it's not about anything else. It's just there's a lot of work which comes through and that needs to be done. So GPA is one factor, but you just have to be willing to do the work. I think that's quite important, and you guys will probably agree that that's the case. Yeah. One more question we have is it unusual to drop your CV at local law firms to seek graduate work? Is it something you guys see often or not?
Yeah, so I can probably add there. So no, I don't see it as unusual because we have it happen. Is it effective? I'm not so sure with just a flat CV. So just expanding on what I said before, what essentially we're looking for is someone that's the right fit. So if you are going to drop a CV in, make sure that your covering letter or your introduction is actually tailored to the individual firm that you're going to. Because for me, I look at, hey, look, am I going to be able to retain this person? Because I'm going to invest a heap of time and energy in developing them. We want to make sure that we can retain them. And part of that is, will they survive in regional New Zealand? Because we know it does take a bit of an adjustment if you're coming from a main centre, and I'm not sort of making any real, can't gloss over that at all. It is different, but at the same time, if you have a tie-up to a region or you've come from a small community, then make a point of explaining that when you do drop in that CV.
Right. Any other tips anyone else has on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's not unusual, and it's actually something I did in my last year at law school. I sent my CV to a regional firm, and they didn't have any jobs at the time, but and then I got a graduate job in a big firm in Christchurch. But a few years later, that same firm is where I ended up. And when they advertised for a role and I applied, and they said, "Oh, we remember you." And so I think shows a bit of initiative, perhaps, and enthusiasm for working in the regions, and I think that's really appreciated by firms as well.
Yeah, and one tip, I know I'm not the panelist on here, but one tip I do have to give to people is that when I was looking for jobs, I actually knocked on doors and I said I wanted to see a partner who's available at the time. And I met with them to show how much energy I had, how much I had to give. And usually partners and associates are quite busy, but they're happy to give you 5 minutes of their time. And it can showcase yourself at that moment, or you can just take a cup of coffee with you and say, here's a coffee, I've got a coffee for you. Hopefully it's the right kind of coffee they drink. And that's what got me a job, basically, because I went into a law firm and they basically said, oh, we don't have a role, but I've got a friend who's looking for a lawyer, and they referred me to that person, and it all started for me from there. So that's something we can look at as an option if you are a grad who's going into the regions, because it's easier to get partner time in small regions, I find, than in a big firm if you go to a really big firm here. There was one question which came through, and I'll answer that before I go into question and answers, is do you need private practice experience to practice in-house? So I started off in Gold Coast in a small firm. I was there for 3-4 months. Then I moved back to New Zealand. It took me a while to get into a law job. It took me 6 months. But what I did is I went in-house. So I was at MSD, and then I was at MSD. Then I went into a small practice in Wellington, and then I moved to Auckland in-house role, and I stayed in Auckland Council for 5.5 years. Went to Simpson Gresson, and then I went to open up my own law firm. So it's not impossible to do it, but what I can say is that if you are looking at opening up, if you're looking at going in-house, it's easier to go from private practice to in-house than the other way around. The market has changed a little bit, but usually private practice firms prefer that you have come from another private practice, or you're very specialized in a space where you can go in-house. But going from private practice to in-house is very easy. Actually, 33% of the legal community is in-house now. So it's quite a large percentage. And so it is not that difficult. And the going in-house has got its advantages. And there's a lot of times that there's small regional areas have sole in-house roles, but these people have had experiences in the big firms, small firms, and then they've taken that experience into in-house roles to be the general counsel or senior counsel role. So it's not hard to do that. So I've got some questions for the panelists. Have you experienced staffing issues regionally, and how do you deal with the increase in workload with limited staff? So perhaps Madeleine and Shannon, you could answer that.
I was going to say Shannon might be able to, because we don't have any staff, but
Yeah, so yes, it is. Look, it's busy. It's really busy. You operate in a small firm with obviously a small number of staff that all play a really crucial role. So, yep, it is difficult when you lose a staff member. That said, we have a really low turnover. We have a really low churn of staff. So in one sense, I think it's a thing where once you get someone in that is the right fit, they stay with you. They're committed to staying there. They enjoy the region. They enjoy the lifestyle. And so luckily, we don't end up with the problem happening very frequently. For instance, in our office at the moment, in Westport, one of my legal execs has been here sort of 23 years. We had another lady retire because she hit retirement age. She was sort of 20 plus years as well. I've managed to stay here now 14 years, what was 3, like I talked about earlier. My other colleagues, 9 years. So it's a thing where it doesn't happen often. It is difficult when you do come across it, but at the end of the day, if you can find a staff member that is the right fit, you will invest that time and energy in them to make it work.
Sure, yeah. We have a question from Jimmy. Jimmy's saying, looking back, what are the things you wish you could have done differently when moving to the regions? And what are the things a lawyer new to regions should do or avoid? And what you could do in the regions could do to improve that? So is there anything you guys have to add to that? Or not add?
I don't have a whole lot of regrets as such. I think I just threw myself into the work and the lifestyle, and tried to get out and meet people as soon as I could, because I'd never been to Gisborne before. I didn't know anyone from here. So I joined a sports team pretty early on and still know the players through that, and playing again this season. So I think that was a really good thing to do. Tried to get involved with the Gisborne branch council as well as soon as I could. And I guess that's a cool thing that you can get into in the regions that you might not be able to do in the main centres. I'm aware that it's quite competitive to get on those sorts of branch councils and the big centres, but in here and in Gisborne at least you can get on pretty quickly and start meeting colleagues that way and have a bit of involvement with how these things are going. So that's really good. Yeah, I like I said, I don't really have many regrets. I think I just encourage any new lawyer that gets in to the regions as their starting point, just to go really hard, have a go at anything that you can get your hands on, and just show that you're keen, and try and get involved in the community as well, because that's a really special part of working in the regions.
Bree, where were you originally from? So you said you just moved to Gisborne. Where were you from, and what brought you to Gisborne again?
I'm from Balclutha, which is a really small town in South Otago. There's about 3,000 people there. And I studied in Dunedin and moved to Wellington, did a year there, and I was really keen to get into the criminal law space, but it was quite hard as a grad with no experience to get into that area. So I was just applying for jobs everywhere basically, and wound up in Gisborne.
And was your role advertised on Seek, or how did you come across your role?
It was Seek, yes. I was lucky enough to have interned with the Police Prosecution Service as a student, so I had that to sort of lean on. But yeah, I just came across the Seek advertisement and thought that I'd have a crack, and my supervisor here is really good about taking on grads that otherwise might not have the opportunity to get into criminal law. So it was really cool.
Yeah. And Georgia, what about you? Were you from Masterton, or are you from a different town?
You know, so I'm born and raised in Auckland, so I'd lived there and went to uni in Auckland basically lived my entire life. And then, yeah, it was my first time living out of home and my first time sort of living in another part of the country. So it was very much a spontaneous, let's just go for it. 2 days before Christmas, telling my friends I was moving at the end of January. But it was definitely not a decision that I don't regret it. I think it helped me grow as a person, kind of put me massively out of my comfort zone. And it was definitely a case of getting out there into the community and joining groups and just meeting people that way. And that was where a lot of the pushing myself out of my comfort zone to actually do that type of stuff, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise. And I know if I'd stayed in Auckland, my life pretty much would have been very much the same as it had been at university. So it was a good experience for me to do that.
Yeah. And how did you find the role? Like, did you go on Seek as well, or was it on somewhere else?
Yeah, no, so I was looking on Seek and just all regions and just seeing what came up, and this role did so.
Yeah. Shannon and Madeleine, well, Madeleine, you don't have staff yet, but how, Shannon, from your perspective, if you if you guys were looking, how do you guys do that? Do you put it on Seek, or is it just word of mouth, or how do you kind of look?
Yeah, no, so it's usually it's online. It's Seek, it's Trade Me Jobs, it's anything you can do. And like I said, for those looking at applying, really, if you are doing sort of the broad brush apply everywhere, make sure you just tailor those applications just a little. It just means that you've taken the time to actually think about where this firm is, what it does, and it goes a long way. In terms of tips for anyone moving to regions and things, look, exactly like the girls have said, it's a case of really kind of putting yourself out there, because if you don't, you will otherwise feel a little isolated. You do need to go and meet people. You need to get involved in hobbies and things with others. I was lucky because I was from Westport, so I kind of had a bit of a ready-made social life to come back to. But I have seen it on the other side. I have a good friend who came here as in the police force, so she was coming to a small town, and look, she approached me at the gym. So that was her place to decide to meet people. So she put herself out there, and that is essentially what needs to happen. A similar friend, she was a teacher, exactly the same thing through a sports team. So they recognised that they were coming to a small community. They did not know anybody, so they needed to move out of their comfort zone a little. And look, they are now completely cemented into the community. They have families here. They have great lives. And it's really just, if you can push yourself in the beginning, it makes that transition obviously a whole lot easier.
Yeah. And Madeleine, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I was going to say sort of what Shannon said again, in terms of if you're from a small, regional New Zealand and you're looking to go back there, then if you're keen to stay where you grew up, then obviously word of mouth is a great way to find jobs and to meet people, and the classic get involved in the community if you're already in that community is a great way to meet people and find out about opportunities. But equally, there's lots of jobs online, and the regions are crying out for lawyers, is what my understanding is. So there should be, I hope, plenty of opportunities out there for people to get into it. And like the girls have said, get stuck in, be prepared to take on anything. You'll get great variety and experience, and the world's your oyster as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, one thing is I'm wondering is and how do you, is it possible for people to work in the regions but being in a different area? So can they just be located, for example, let's just say in Dunedin but be working for someone in Christchurch? Is that possible or is that not a possibility?
That was what I was doing before my current role. So I was working for a Christchurch firm remotely most of the time, and I'd go up there sort of every week to fortnight, and it worked really well. And I mean, the travel was a bit of a pain, I'll be honest, but it's certainly, you know, you can do it. You can work remotely nowadays. I think it works really effectively. You know, like I said earlier, the pandemic has meant that people are more equipped to meet online. A lot of things are done by email. A lot of things are done over the phone. The phone is my number one work tool. And we've got clients all over New Zealand, actually, which has been a bit of a surprise for us as well. So I think absolutely it's possible to work remotely if that's something you do. And I think it's, as a graduate, it would be really important to have those touch points with your supervisors, and perhaps the girls who are working in firms that have got bigger offices and bigger centres might have something to say about that. But I think that would be key if you're quite junior, and certainly easily done if you've got a few years under your belt and you can work relatively autonomously.
Yeah, okay. I've got 3 more questions. I think we can answer this quite quickly. Do regional firms ever have requirement for mature temporary solicitor / locum? So do you need that? Is that a
Yeah. How do you find one of those? So from our perspective, me and my colleague went on maternity leave at the same time, which created a massive headache. And we, at that point, struggled to find, like, that's exactly what we needed. So I don't know how you can kind of make that work, whether there's a mechanism whereby there's a wanted ad goes out or an offer of services. But yeah, I think there's an absolute market for that.
Yeah, so Kimberly, you can probably email Shannon about that. Now, for those who have gone into our own practice, sorry, I'm just going to read this again. For those who have gone into their own practice, what made you sure that you were ready for the jump?
That's probably one for me, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever know you're ready. It felt like a huge risk. It felt like a really brave move, but at the end of the day, I wanted to work close to where I was living and have all the benefits that we've talked about. You know, I can walk from school to the office to preschool in one hit, and that's been really great. And working in your community. So there wasn't a full-time law firm in Methven, which is a very small town of about roughly 2,000 people. It doubles in winter for the ski season. So we sort of thought, well, if we don't want to be driving into town, then maybe there's some people locally who don't either, and they want to see their lawyer locally. So me and a friend took the plunge, and no regrets. Absolutely love it. It's great working in your community, small community, but yeah, felt like a brave move. And there's a bit of a process with the Law Society, but once you do that, I think you just got to have faith in your experience and look. Have the networks that you've built up in the years preceding that point. So we regularly phone a friend, and that's been key for us. And you can't underestimate the importance of your networks.
Yeah, it's hard work. I'll tell you what, I've only been out for 4 months, but it's a lot of hard work, but it's very rewarding. And you do have all the time in the world, and when you want to work, how you want to work. So it is definitely good. Now, I'm just going to finish this off, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for being part of this and taking your time out to give your views and give your experiences, kind of talk about your experiences. I've got a comment here, which is probably a good time to kind of finish off. It says, not a question, but a comment. 3 years ago, left a mid-sized firm in Auckland after a lengthy career and moved to Whangamata. I should have done it years earlier. Small town life and legal practice is great. Highly recommended. So I guess you guys are all saying the same thing as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So thank you very much, Shannon, Georgia, Bree, Madeleine, for being part of this. Thank you for taking out your time. And I hope you guys have a lovely afternoon, and enjoy your day. And to all the attendees, thank you for your time being part of this call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.